Sorry, I thought that Annex Birmingham was taken care of, but it's not. So do we need to move Annex Birmingham? Yeah. So can we... Vicky moves and Phil seconds the Annex Birmingham amendment, and we all know what the Annex Birmingham amendment is. So I'm just going to put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And there was another one. Was to close at the same time as Metro Sports opens. So given the delay in Metro Sports, can we just delay the closure of Whanganui? Because otherwise there's no swimming at all in the southwest.
So, Councillor Buck, we've had a look at the operational funding, the maintenance budgets for the Whanganui pool versus the Whanganui Rec Centre. Bearing in mind that we don't run the Whanganui pool, we believe we're okay. To the extent that we're not covered for a short period of time, the sum of figures involved.
Right, so that's fine. So we don't need a resolution to... So we have just assumed now, and we're very clear, that it closes now in the budget in 2020. Or when the Metro Sports opens. Whichever decade that is.
Yes, no, I understand that expectation. It's not necessarily exactly what we've got in the budget at this point in time, but it's non-impactful for today's discussion.
Yeah, I just don't want to be told next year that it's closing or anything. So, yeah. Okay, I've recorded what you said. Thanks, Pete.
Was there just something about Annex Birmingham Road?
Yeah. Okay, so right now really the only things that are left now are the People's Choice amendments around the financial strategy and strategic assets.
There is one other which got missed because it's under an Accessible City and Anchor project, and it's the amendment that the stadium be deferred to be commenced in 2026.
Well, I don't know that we can actually do that because it's a unilateral decision on the cost sharing agreement. We've already pushed it out beyond. The Auditor General's accepted that the amount that we've pushed it out by, because of the public statements of the Prime Minister and the Minister, have been compatible with our decision. That has been sufficient, but I don't know that I can accept an amendment to...
We've had this discussion, it's an insurance claim.
Yeah.
We have to show that we're actually going to do it.
I know.
Otherwise the insurer might as well just tear up the contract. We've had this conversation a million times.
But no, but I don't think that we can change we can't change unilaterally the cost sharing agreement.
That's absolutely right. We can't change it. There's going to have to be any change at all. They have to be negotiated with the parties.
Yeah, and look, we've got the insurance thing. Look, during the course of the next year, I mean, I don't want to get to a point where, I mean, there's no point putting it up for debate and having a resolution on it. We can't change the cost sharing agreement around this table. That has to be done in negotiation with central government. We've already told central government we want to talk to them about the cost sharing agreement, we want to talk to them about the blueprint, we want to talk to them about our land drainage recovery program, we want to talk to them about a whole range of different issues, and we've started that conversation. We will not get the Minister stating publicly that he agrees to push this out to 2026, and that means that we don't get an LTP passed if we write that into our LTP.
But just they unilaterally changed their side by
care. I don't care. The truth is that there is some issues that we do need to resolve with central government, but I can't take this amendment in front of the LTP hearing today. I can't take this amendment. So, I mean, that's the advice that I've received in terms of legal advice.
It would never be passed by order.
Currently in our LTP, we still have no written confirmation from government that they're accepting of where we've got it, which is currently different to what's in the cost share.
Yes, that's right. That's right, and
Sorry,
and
I
the
I
fact
can probably
that
talk to that. The audit office spoke distinctly with Sarah. We wrote letters to Sarah around the timing of the anchor projects, around the expectations around ownership, and while they didn't agree, they were comfortable with the position we took in the draft long-term plan, and were comfortable that the discussions carried on from that point. So we do have an evidential trail that the Crown and ourselves have an agreed position on for the current timing of the stadium.
and that has been accepted by the auditor.
Yes.
And we can't change that today. So I'm ruling that amendment can't be put. So that brings us on to the financial strategy and the strategic assets, which we can address. Now, there was one of the amendments included in the range of amendments that doesn't need to be put as an amendment because I'm still working with Carleen over how we establish this external group that provides advice, but I've got absolutely no difficulty that they report bi-monthly to Strategy and Finance. So it's perfectly fine. So Carleen and I will just take that on board and how we establish this group, whether they're advising to management, whether they're advising to governance, or whether it's a combination of both, is yet to be determined. We've still got a bit of work to do.
So just to clarify, the establishment of that group, is that established by the Mayor or is that established by the Council? Will it come to Council for a decision or will it be a decision?
We haven't decided
Differently than
whether
that.
it's going to be the Chief Executive or the Council. Yeah.
Okay. So it'll be reported on in some way to the
it
Council?
will be reported on in some way very soon, but it's still work in progress, and there's still people that we're talking to. Because there are people who would be better providing technical advice and support to the organisation, and people who'd be better providing governance input to the governance. So that's what we're working on at the moment. There's no...
And the spirit of the resolution that we were intending putting is very, very clear. So as long as we can be confident that's going to be taken into account in any considerations, then I'm certainly comfortable with that. Thank you.
That's great. All right, so what I propose is that with the remaining ones, that the first amendment that we deal with is that the 170 million of growth expenditure be removed from the LTP, and then the strategic assets will go through and, as has been requested, put them individually. And then the last two amendments, I think we'll just put them together because they really cover the same issue, and that's not drawing on the sale of companies or shares in companies in any one of the 3 years of the first 3 years of the LTP.
If I could request that they be put separately, because our reason for the thinking in each is quite different. So the mitigation for one is different than the mitigation for the other. So it's not wanting to be difficult, but if we could have those put separately, I would appreciate that.
That's two separate debates, and we are now at 4:26.
So maybe if we could agree to debate both together, but just take each one separately from a decision-making viewpoint?
Yep, fine. Okay.
The council shareholding in base, does that include ownership of the town hall? Obviously, I'm keen to keep the town hall in our strategic assets, but I'm not so worried about V-base. Sorry.
I'll have to request an answer on that.
Sorry, the town hall ownership, can you tell me exactly who owns the town hall? Because I'm really keen to keep it as a strategic asset, but I'm not sure what council shareholding in V-base, whether that includes the town hall. So before I vote on it, I just want to understand it.
I believe I know the answer, but I'll call a friend.
I suspect, does V-base own any of the other ones? Like, does it own Addington Arena? It does. So no, unless the town hall is listed as coming off the assets list, it remains on the strategic assets list. Presumably the Christchurch Town Hall is on the assets list.
Well, I just want to be totally, that's what I want to be totally clear about.
Yes, but if Addington Arena is owned by V-base, then we wouldn't be taking it off the list.
Okay, so can we just put an additional one, that the town hall remain on the strategic assets list?
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
That would be an easier way of doing it. Thanks.
No, you don't.
Yeah, that's what I want to be clear about, but we'll deal with it when we come to it.
Well, why don't we put the council shareholding in V-Base Limited, provided that the Town Hall, Christchurch Town Hall, remain on the strategic assets list? How about that?
Yep.
Yep. Good. Okay, so the first one, $170 million of growth expenditure be removed from the LTP. Who's providing advice on that? You're only three.
Yeah, I was hoping to get one on the last debate, but that didn't go anywhere, did it? I find it really difficult to respond to this one because it doesn't tell me why or what or where. I mean, obviously what we have is a major investment across a whole lot of asset classes basically to support growth of the city. So traditionally the council has said the most important things are basically renewal, so keeping the engine room of the city running, but then basically continuing to invest in the key infrastructure that delivers growth. And for the city, that growth infrastructure has been in roading, in key trunk networks for obviously for water, for wastewater, for stormwater. But because we've always had a commitment to building new communities, it's always also been an investment into community assets such as libraries and swimming pools, community centres, parks and reserves. So I suppose, you know, it just seems to me to be a little incongruous to suddenly say, actually, we need to actually continue to invest in making sure the city is an attractive place and we're ready to invest in when people wish to do that. And increasingly there are expectations and commitments that come through the Resource Management Act for us to demonstrate we have at least so many years of growth headroom. To suddenly start arbitrarily taking money out of that doesn't mean we're going to be able to deliver that. It simply means we're probably going to do 8 years worth of investment rather than 10, or it means that we're going to be investing a lot more slowly into growth, which if development pressures come on is only going to catch us short. So I'm struggling to see actually how we can meaningfully give effect to that outcome. But I don't think, given that we've got a program of works going on that creates a sustainable program of investment for growth, suddenly trimming $170 million off that over the 10 years is a very sustainable or strategic move to make.
Okay, that's fine. So could we have a mover and a seconder and we'll get to the debate? Moved by Yanni, seconded by Andrew, and I'd like to open up the debate.
So it is a huge challenge for us because basically what we're faced with is a rezoning of huge amounts of greenfield land and then a kind of not a commitment, not a requirement, but a decision about whether we choose to fund all the infrastructure that goes to those new growth areas. We heard the other day that the value of rezoning land in an existing rural area or open space area to commercial, we had $1 million and we got a value of 10 million if we rezoned it. So this is what is happening through all these growth areas. And I know that there's some costs occurred with the process of development, but fundamentally it is a huge expense to provide the infrastructure to these growth areas that we have to weigh up about whether we can afford or not. So if we want to do the things in the central city that many of us have said makes sense and is a good idea, and some of us have said maybe we need to also spend money fixing some of the broken infrastructure first, then it's really hard for me to support the 600 million that's going into growth in our city. This is unsustainable economic investment into areas that some are actually not even going ahead in the timeframes that we thought they were. We, quite quickly after the earthquake, rezoned a number of places so that we could try and deal with the housing situation, enable people to have choice and to move into some of these growth areas. We have not seen the growth that we expected. So over the course of this 10-year plan, I do not believe that we will be able to spend the money on this infrastructure. I don't think it's wise to spend this money on infrastructure ahead of the growth in the hope that the growth will go there. And I think one of the concerning things, of course, is through some of the other agencies that we've heard from, like CDC, is the worry of the oversupply of housing in the next 5 years. So we get to a tipping point where suddenly we have all these suburbs that are being built, we've got all this expensive infrastructure, but we possibly don't have the demand. And what impact does that have on us financially? So 170 million isn't actually a lot out of the 600 million. Productivity Commission is looking at ways of working through. One of their recommendations is again looking at developer agreements around the ability for developers to provide the infrastructure, given that they tend to benefit from it, and how they might be able to fund that in a different way. And I would welcome having that conversation. I also think you can't really divorce this from the DC's issue in terms of our DC's policy, but fundamentally I do believe that spending huge amounts of money on growth infrastructure for growth that isn't occurring or doesn't need to be done as a priority when we've got broken streets and broken suburbs, then I don't think that's a good use of our funding. All
right. Anyone else? I'll put that motion. So do you want to put up those in favour vote yes, those opposed vote no. It's lost. That all currently listed assets remain on the strategic assets list. We'll just have one debate over this and then I'll put them all individually. So who would like to move this? Andrew? Seconded Phil. Is there any debate on it? Glenn?
Thank you. I strongly urge the council to keep the currently listed assets on the strategic assets list for this reason. I think the counter I would strongly advise against proceeding down that path. You can see on page 55 of your agenda a submission theme that's been picked up. It's been highlighted. It talks about the loss of control over asset sales. My view on this is that were we to proceed down this path to take them off the list, so to thereby circumvent a usual part of the process, would not only disempower our constituents, I think it would diminish our transparency as a council. We know what happens when we don't consult. We've seen this happen before over social housing rent increases and the pressure wastewater system, for instance. I think taking the line of least resistance potentially puts the council at risk. My view is that it runs against a 4-to-1 preference to not sell down or off assets as well, as we've seen in our submission process, and I think we at least owe our constituents the ability to have a say over the future of what belongs to them. My view on this, to sum up really, is that we risk losing the confidence of our city by shortcutting what is a democratic process, whether it's the old LGA or the new. Consultations are a fundamental part of that, and I would strongly advise against taking the path, going down that path to take them off.
I'd like to speak against that. My very strong view is that what came through the submissions process was that when people were pressed to ask whether there was a difference between City Care, who was in a competitive market, winning and losing contracts available in our city and other cities, and Orion, that was our infrastructure company, they said yes, there was a big difference. One was strategic for the city to own and the other wasn't. And to me, this is simply about not taking away the City Council's obligation to make decisions about these particular assets, which they may or may not make in the future. It simply doesn't require a special consultative procedure. That doesn't mean that we don't consult at all. It just means that we don't have to go through an amendment to the long-term plan process or through a special consultative procedure in order to undertake a particular role. In terms of the strategic assets that we're leaving on the list, or that I'm proposing that we leave on the list, Orion, the port company and the airport, Again, it was absolutely crystal clear that people could see that there was a difference between what was strategic and what wasn't. And it's interesting down in Timaru where we saw Ports of Tauranga purchase significant shareholding in the Timaru port. In that particular case, it was still on their strategic assets list. They went out and did a public consultation and then they sold the shares. So all it did was delay proceedings, as it were, for 4 weeks while the consultation process was undertaken, and the outcome for Timaru has been extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And I don't think there'd be anyone in Timaru that would be saying for 1 minute that you wouldn't want to have that level of investment into your hometown, and actually it has created a few challenges for us, I'd have to say. But I'm not suggesting that we go down that particular track. These are the ones that people said weren't strategic. I understand people's sense of what they've lost, but I have to say that in terms of what we need to invest in as a city, I think we actually have to look very seriously at capital release in the variety of forms that it may exist. And if you actually think about the situation that we're in, we're not completely in this situation because, as some have said, that the government is requiring us to pay for what we shouldn't pay for. This city was underinsured, and every single person around this table knows that. So why should the taxpayers of New Zealand pay the price for this council's underinsurance and some of the things that actually we should be fronting up to as a city? I want our city to be independent and able to stand up and speak for itself and not be beholden. And I'm very happy that we make a distinction between what is strategic for our city, our airport, our port and our lines company, and what is not strategic. A construction company, well, it's become a construction company, it bought out the shares of a failed company. Red Bus, which would want to ply its wares in other cities as it loses contracts here to ECAN's competitive system. Enable, we're not in a position to sell at this stage, but as I've said in my amendment, if we look to the future, it looks like that the time that we need to address some of the problems that we're going to face financially are going to be at a time where we can look at Enable, and that's why I'm proposing that there be some amendments in that regard so that we can bring that into the picture. And of course, Lancaster Park, obviously we're not going to sell it now. That was the question that I was asked during the process. We haven't settled our insurance claim, and that's holding up a few things as well. So these are things that we don't need to go out and have a separate specific engagement on. We've already engaged with our communities and they've already said that these are not strategic compared to the others. Yanni.
I feel really strongly that these are strategic assets. In fact, just recently, Council made a decision to ask V-Base to continue with its community rate. If you look at the rationale for taking these off as strategic assets, there's almost none. There's almost nothing. And if you're worried about judicial review for things like motorways, I suggest you look at the lack of rationale behind why these should be removed from our strategic asset list. Simply saying that it may not be necessary for the well-being of the community, and that perhaps parking in Central City could be provided by promoters of retail and commercial developments, doesn't actually provide any discussion around the benefits or the disadvantages of these being strategic assets. And if you go through them, City Care, I think, is a hugely important strategic asset. You look at the ability for us, and I think, we've got a resolution or some further work to be done, hopefully that we can get a report back on, is actually looking at bringing City Care into a different arrangement with Council, given the significant skills that it has and given the significant work we have to do. If you go to Red Bus, I just want to read you an article from the newspaper a few years ago, and that was that 28 buses were taken off the road by the police. 28 buses. And what's really interesting about that, and what I think was expressed through submissions from the person that came in and spoke to us, who said that they thought that Red Bus was a much superior bus operator than any of the others, out of the 28 buses that were taken off the road, it's really interesting to look at where they came from. Red Bus said none of its buses had been ordered off and only 4 had minor problems. Leopard Coach Line said 2 had been ordered off the road and 6 had minor problems, and CBS would not give figures for their buses. And what the police said was that they were absolutely alarmed at the way in which the buses were operating, because it's extremely disappointing that they've had to come out on the road and check, and the fact that these buses were operating with flaws that the police have identified that are placing passengers at risk. So, that's the reality of not thinking that public transport is strategic and leaving it to the private sector to deliver. We should be incredibly proud that the Red Bus company that we own actually is one of the best performing public transport operators in the city, and long may that continue. So I think we need to look at public transport, and we've got a process to do that, but I don't support removing it from a strategic asset. I think there's huge risks to doing that, where you get low quality public transport, as is proved by the evidence that we've had in the recent history. And finally, I'll just touch on 2 other points, which is the Addington Arena and Lancaster Park, and also the parking. Addington Arena and Lancaster Park, I think Addington Arena is a fantastic community venue. V-Base run it. I can't see any reason why you would remove the shareholding in V-Base. That is a venue management company that we have. I think it does a good job. There's improvements, sure, we can make around the edges, but fundamentally, I can't see why you'd remove that from a strategic asset and think about all those community groups that have benefited over time and that will benefit going forward by having a discounted community rate that V-Base is able to provide. Think about the levels of sponsorship that they give to the community. And just to talk on Lancaster Park, we're still in our insurance negotiation. The insurer is saying that we may be able to fix it on site. So why would we send a signal to our insurer that we don't think it's strategic? Surely the same reason why we can't change the cost share to defer the stadium should apply to the existing Lancaster Park. It is an incredibly important facility, and if the future isn't to be a stadium, I would expect to go through a full public consultation with our community over what the future of that site holds. And if it's taken off the strategic asset list, I think that doesn't give the commitment or the requirement that we will do that. And finally, the off-street parking, we heard numerous submitters came in. In fact, it was one of the most commented things outside of the other big issues. We had an organised group of people that felt incredibly passionate about council, I think, retaining car parking, off-street car parking facilities in the central city. Given we're going to lose a lot of on-street car parking, I think it's essential that we have a very strong public off-street parking regime in the central city. We want people to use alternative means of transport. We want cycleways and bus priority ways, and that takes on-street parking off. But I think it would be incredibly important to have people being able to afford to come into the city and not having to pay twice as much to park their car as they have to pay to swim at the new Metro Sports facility, for example. Or being able to come to the theatre and not have to pay more than the cost of a ticket of going to a theatre or a movie or any other activity they want to do. And we can control that if we own these off-street parking facilities, if we think they're strategic, and I certainly do. So I urge you not to support removing these.
Okay, we'll go through them one by one. Shall we put them all up on the screen?
No, I mean,
Yeah, okay, so we'll put them up on the screen. So, can we... Yeah, the voting system, yeah. So, city care, so these are if you don't want them removed, this is ironic, if you don't want them removed, vote yes, and if you do want them removed, say no.
I was quite clear to you, it's not that.
yes, if you want them to remain.
Yes, if you want them to remain. If you don't want them removed. Yes, if you want them to remain, and no, if you're happy to have them removed.
So you can simply say, if in your head you say they're strategic, say yes, and if you don't think they're strategic, you vote no. Yes.
That's right.
Thanks, Joan.
So it's lost. Next one. Red Bus. Lost. Next one. Enable. Lost. Addington Arena. Lost. Lancaster Park. Lost. Council shareholding and fee base. I don't think you can vote on this, Jamie.
Four of us can.
Oh, how many? 4. Okay, back off. The council shareholding and fee base provided that. Oh, I see. Okay, it is. Well, except that it's not the fee base. Yeah. No, we'll just put the town hall as an 8. Okay, put the town hall as an 8. Christchurch Town Hall, call it. No, take out all those words, remain on the strategic asset list. Let's just put the Christchurch Town Hall. Because it doesn't have shareholding, it owns it. I mean, if we were to sell V-Base, which I doubt, we would take back the ownership of the town hall. So, I mean, it's an academic exercise, but it's an important one to reflect here. No. So, the council shareholding in fee base. Yes, the 4 directors abstain. What happened to the thing? Well, it's actually probably better that the 4 just don't vote at all. Can you do that? Can you just take them off? So take them off. They're Tim Scandrett, Paul Lonsdale, Jamie Goff and Carleen. Oh, but you don't get a vote anyway. This will carry. That's carried. And all off-street parking facilities owner and operated by the council.
We're back in the room now, please.
Eh?
We're back in the room now.
It should be owned and operated.
Yeah, let's put it back on the list now.
No, look, I don't think anyone's going to object to the Christchurch Town Hall, so I'm just going to take a voice vote on that one. So, and just say that the 3 don't vote on it.
No, town hall's no different than Lancaster Park or Addington Arena. It's just
No. Well,
We're doing number 7 now.
yeah, we're doing number 7. So,
It's owned and operated.
Yep, so 7.
it's lost. And
So Christchurch Town Hall is, you're going to just do voices.
well, I was just going to do voices on it because I can't imagine that anyone have any difficulty with that. So, all those in favour of the Christchurch Town Hall remaining a strategic asset, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. So that one's carried as well.